Bradley challenged us the first week. He challenged us to get out and to try to observe the wonders of the universe, try to get into it. And I've definitely been doing that. Out there, it's pretty ugly, but I personally like to look at the stars. And, here is pretty much the worst place. It's always either raining or with the light pollution, you don't see much anyways. But I still try to get out. Me and Bradley go for walks. Bradley's my dog, not this Bradley. A lot of people think that's funny, that our dog's name is Bradley, and we always mention that, and everybody always giggles a little bit. But yeah, so I always take Bradley out for walks, and every day after work, I'll take him for a walk, and he likes to sniff around, and he really takes his time, and I'm always like, come on, let's go, especially if it's raining, come on, let's go. But at night, it's kind of the opposite. I sit there and just stare at the stars, and he's always tugging at me to, come on, what are you doing? He's always looking up at me. He has no idea what I'm doing. But for me, I love the wonders of the universe. I love the idea that we don't really know what's going on out there, that there's a huge mystery that we can't really comprehend. And so today, I wanted to talk about the wonders of love, because for me, it's kind of the same thing. I don't know if you got into it, if you talked about love with anybody. You probably didn't, but for me, it's a wonder. I mean, I can sit here and talk about it, and I'd only brush the surface of love. It's so much deeper than words. It's pretty much the hardest thing to define. So why should we discuss this? Why should we discuss love? Well, it is a wonder. It's a gift from God. So we're here. So let's do it. If you do have a Bible, you can turn to 1 Corinthians 13. And I'm going to start in the beginning, chapter 13. And this is Paul writing, and he says, "If I speak in tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I'm only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing." So for here, what Paul is kind of saying is this entire series we've been talking about the wonders of the universe. We're gaining knowledge on God. We're learning about getting deeper into our faith in God and seeing that in creation. But all of that is pretty much worthless without this last piece, which is love. And I'm going to do a little bit of the scientific view. I didn't really get too deep into it. Bradley's been doing a great job at showing us how science explains the creations of God and how that kind of mixes with our faith. In the scientific community, I don't really like the idea that they see as love. For them, it's pretty much a survival mechanism, right? To continue to produce, we have to love our children. I don't know about you and your babies, but it's a lot of hard work. They're cute and all, but my kid was colicky. She cried all the time when she was a baby, and it took a lot of effort not to just, cover her mouth and say goodnight, right? And so, and that in the scientific view, and I'm sure a lot of you are nodding along with me, yes, totally, I agree with that. And that's kind of how they define love. It's there so that we don't do that. We have this love so that we continue producing. For me, though, I don't like that idea. I think it goes way further than that. One example I think of that goes beyond that, a few weeks ago, just reminded me of this now. I was at a restaurant, and I looked over at an elderly couple, and they're holding hands, and the food came. And I didn't realize until this point that the man was actually blind, and she was showing him his food with his hands, and he was eating it. And I don't know why, but to me, that just really defined love for me, just in that moment. But anyways, how do we as a community define love? A community of faith, right? We're all here, we're all at church, so there's a reason we're here. How can we define love that's outside of this survival mechanism? But when you think of the word love and trying to define it, it's not that easy. I mean, all these words fall short. Even us as a community of faith, we look at the Bible to try to describe love. And if you look at the New Testament, it was written in Greek. There's actually 4 different words for love. I mean, when you look at one of the most famous passages for this is when Jesus says to Peter, "Do you love me?" And he says, "Yes, I love you." If you read that in English, you have no idea what they're talking about because they're actually using two different words. Jesus says, "Do you agape me?" And Peter says, "Yes, I philia you," or eros, I forget the one. But anyways, he actually answers him in a different form of love. And if you didn't know that, you'd read that passage and have no clue what he's talking about. So it's tough when we get into words on describing love because it's more than words. And I love this from the Gospel of Philip. And if you know the Bible well, you'll know that this isn't in the Bible. This is part of the Nicomachean Scriptures. In the Gospel of Philip, it says, "The names of worldly things is utterly deceptive, for they turn the heart from what is real to what is unreal. Whoever hears the word God thinks not of what is real, but rather of what is unreal." What he's getting into is this idea that we use words to describe things that are actually outside of the realm of describing things. And he's talking about God. We talk about God, but we're not talking about God. We're talking about our earthly understanding of God put into our earthly words that don't quite grasp the meaning of God. Same thing with love. When we talk about love, I can tell you my experiences with love and this and that, but we're not getting into the actual idea of love. And I don't know if you like Wayne's World. I love Wayne's World. It's kind of, they poke fun at everything, but there's actually this serious moment where Wayne quotes Kierkegaard, and he says, "If you label me, you negate me." What Kierkegaard actually said was, "Put me in a system and you negate me. I am not a mathematical system. I am." And so I think that in this, when we talk about love, we can talk all day, we can look at the scientific viewpoint of it, but we're trying to put it into a system. We're so, as people, we just need to define everything. We need to have answers for absolutely everything. And I think when it comes to love, we can't quite make it. And just like love and God, we try to put labels on them. I've been in church for a few years now, and I've heard this saying many times. I'm sure you have too. This, I'll quote unquote, "God is love." I don't know if you've heard this. I don't know if you agree with this. For me, this is just way too simple a thing to say. We're talking about two absolutely huge ideas, God and love, and we're saying God is love. And for me, this just falls short of both of them, of what they are. And I don't think God or love can be explained as either. There's just so much broader. The other problem with this saying for me is I don't know about your comprehension of love, but for me, when I think of love, I think of a lot of bad things. I mean, if you're trying to explain to somebody God is love, a lot of people think of love and they don't think of love. They think about their experiences. Love may be perfect, but for us, it's not. All of us here have experienced hurt and pain along with love, and a lot of us, when we talk about love, that's what we think about. We think about the tough times we've had with love. I don't know if you've ever read the poem The Raven, but it's pretty much my favorite poem, and I'm going to quote just the beginning. If you haven't read it, you should go home and read the rest. But here's the beginning. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as if someone gently rapping at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more. Distinctly I remember it was the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow. Vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcased of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here forevermore. This poem goes into this man who is haunted by his lost love, Lenore, who is nameless here forevermore. She's passed away. So for a lot of us, when we think about love, we think about the love that we've lost. I'm going to get into my Fight Club quote, because I've always got to have one. And today, for the Fight Club reference will be, main character has insomnia. He goes into the doctor and he says, "Doc, I need something to get through this. Like, I need to fall asleep." And his doctor says, "No, you need healthy, natural sleep." And he says, "Well, Doc, I'm in pain here." And he says, "Well, if you want to see pain, Swing by First Methodist Tuesday nights, see the guys with testicular cancer. That's pain. So he does. He goes to First Methodist, and there's a testicular cancer support group. And we meet right away, the first guy to share. His name's Thomas. And I'm going off my memory because I've seen the movie like 100 times. So we meet Thomas, and Thomas says, me and Mindy, we wanted 3 kids. I wanted 2 boys and a girl. She wanted 2 girls and a boy. We never really could agree on anything. But she had her first child last week, a girl, with her new husband. And thank God, I'm glad for her because she deserves it. This is what he says, and he just breaks down into tears. And so for a lot of us, when we deal with this idea of love, we fall into one of these 2 categories, where we've lost the ones we love, or where they've left us, or they're gone now kind of thing. And I'm pretty sure most of us can relate to these 2 characters, to these 2 ideas of lost love. And so when we use a term like God is love, a lot of us don't think of God or love. We think of pain and hurt. And so it's difficult to talk about love without having our emotions poured into it. And you can't define something like that because for each of us, it's a separate experience. And so with this idea, this difficulty with love, how do we experience this love when we're just so full of hurt when it comes to love? And as Bradley discussed time last week, I'm going to quote another great man who said, on a long enough timeline, the survival rate for everyone drops to 0. And it's kind of the same thing with love. To tackle such a tough idea of love, we have to first come to the conclusion that love is destined to end. In this worldly life, we are all here now, but everybody before us has passed. This is going to happen. We have to come to this conclusion that what we love eventually will leave our grasp. If we're looking at the earthly way to view this, this is the way to do it. I mean, we're all here as a community of faith. We believe in something higher than that, in the idea that there is more to this idea, but to come to a basic conclusion that eventually I'm going to die. I have many people who I love. There's going to be one day where I don't see them. It's going to happen. To come to that, see, in the past, everybody accepts this. They see death, they see sorrow, they see suffering, and it's just part of life. Here in this day and age, it's kind of swept under the rug, so it's really hard to grasp this, but it's true. Eventually, everything will pass. Like Lenore, she will be gone, no matter what, eventually. And it doesn't make it easy, it doesn't make it hard, but as a community, we can come together and at least acknowledge this and to try to move on. So that's enough of my down. You're all feeling a little down, okay? But let's try to push past this, okay? Let's accept that, yes, we've all been hurt with love. All of us have. It has happened. So let's try to move on. A coworker of mine, he's really funny. He talks a lot. And sometimes I have to kind of drown him out. But there's one thing that he said that I really love. And he says, for most people, there's about 100 things going on in their life. And about 95 of those are really good things, and maybe 5 of them aren't so good. And he says, and it depends what type of person you are. Are you going to dwell on the 5 things that aren't so awesome, or the 95 things that are awesome? And I think that's kind of the way we can approach this. For me, I've had a really tough year when it comes to love. I would say it's been the hardest year of my life, especially in the church. I'll admit this year I've felt the furthest away from God that I've felt in a long time. I've been struggling to see him in my life and to experience his love. And that's okay. I feel comfortable saying that. I'm still up here speaking. That doesn't mean I'm not a person of faith. I think those kind of struggles bring us further in faith. And that's why I'm excited to start doing the Psalms next week, because we can deal with these kind of issues that we're not going to have a perfect relationship with God. It's not always going to be that way. And what kind of a relationship is it where There isn't up and downs. This is part of who we are. It's part of humanity. So for me, it's been a tough year. In this year, my dad has passed away. His mother has passed away, my grandma. And also my ex-wife has had another child with another man. I feel kind of like Thomas. She had a boy, and I always wanted a boy. And so, it's been a very difficult year for me to get through these kind of things. But something that helps me is one thing I was thinking about, which kind of puts a smile on my face. I was thinking about the day my daughter was born. I don't know if any of you guys have witnessed your child being born. For many women, I'm sure you'd want to forget that moment. But for me, it's burnt into my memory. It's one of my fondest memories. I felt the most ecstasy I've ever felt in my life. I almost felt out of body seeing my child come out. Witnessing love take form, it's a miracle. It really is a miracle. And because we look around and we see all these people, we forget that we are a wonder of the universe, that we are a living miracle. I don't know if you've read the graphic novel The Watchmen, but I have. It's actually, I think it's on Time magazine's 100 best literature of the year or of the century. So it's actually seen as quite good literature for a graphic novel. That's pretty good. But in this moment, there's a superhero named Dr. Manhattan, and he's kind of he's bigger than Superman. He's pretty much God in this comic book. He can do anything he wants. And he has this epiphany about human life. See, he drifts away from human life because he doesn't like humans at this. But here he has an epiphany on Mars. He's talking to his ex-girlfriend. I'm not going to give you the whole background, but anyways, I love this quote from him, and he says, "Thermodynamic miracles, events with odds against so astronomical they're effectively impossible, like oxygen spontaneously becoming gold." Okay, I'm just going to explain that if you didn't catch it. He's talking about miracles, like scientific miracles, ones that the scientific community could relate to, like oxygen spontaneously turning into gold, which would be a miracle. "I long to observe such a thing, and yet in each human coupling, 1,000 million sperm vie for a single egg. Multiply those odds of your ancestors being alive, meeting, siring this precise son, that exact daughter, until your mother loves a man. And of that union, of the 1,000 million children competing for fertilization, it was you, only you that emerged. To distill so specific a form from that chaos of improbability, like turning air into gold, that is the crowning unlikelihood, the thermodynamic miracle." She replies, "But if my birth, if that's a thermodynamic miracle, you could say that about anybody in the world." Yes, anybody in the world, but the world is so full of people, so crowded with these miracles that they become commonplace. I forget. We gaze continuously at the world, and it grows dull in our perception. Yet seen from another vantage point, as if new, it may still take the breath away. Come, dry your eyes, for you are life, rarer than a quark, and unpredictable beyond the dreams of Heisenberg. The clay in which the forces that shape all things leave their fingerprints most clearly. I love that last line. It actually, if it makes you think of the Adam and Eve story, I'm sure it's a reference to it. He says, "You are the clay in which the forces that shape all things leave their fingerprints most clearly." And I think Bradley has mentioned that the miracle that in our hands, there's molecules, like billions and millions of molecules, and we still, in scientific terms, don't understand why they just stay together. We don't really understand the ideas of gravity and how everything does this. We're literally walking miracles. And we tend to forget these kind of things, how awesome everything is, how we're here, how I can speak right now, how we can comprehend these ideas of love and hurt and pain, and how we can come together and get through these things. And for me, when we talk about love and we try to define it, there's no formula for it. There's no mathematics to answer it. It exists in a realm that we can experience, but we can't define. And that's what it is. It's an experience. And so I'm going to finish reading 1 Corinthians chapter 13. I'm sure my mom will be happy that I'll finish it, because I'm pretty sure I've heard the other part of this chapter like a million times in my life. But anyways, chapter 13, we'll start from the beginning. "If I speak in tongues of men and of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast. It is not proud, it does not dishonor, it is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered, it keeps no records of wrong. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always preserves. Love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when completeness comes, what is in part disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me. For now we see only a reflection in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. And now these three remain, faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. He's describing what we're talking about perfectly here. What I'm talking about, how the things of, the tongue, all these things will pass away. But love exists in a realm beyond this. All of us here today are here for a reason. We believe, we hope in something more than what's in front of us. We believe in something higher, a higher calling, whatever you want to call it, God, a force that puts everything together. We are the clay that the forces leave their fingerprints on. There's something bigger out there, and love comes from this. So when we get down on these tough times, like I've been talking about, this last year has been just very difficult for me. What we have to remember is that these are earthly things that are destined to pass. God created love, and love will continue, and it's a strong force. That's why we feel so low when we can't find it, but we feel so like an ecstasy when my child was born. It's huge highs and huge lows. But when we come to God, like Paul is discussing here, we can become love. We can become patient. We can become kind. And when we live this life of love, it will be reflected in us. We will feel God's presence, and we can move on as a community to be a wonder, to be a miracle. We are the wonders of the universe, us.